Okay, for some reason they left something out of labs this time. Before you would click on content and it would give you all the passwords, but that's not working this semester. Yeah, it is admin. I went and had to look through my notes to see. And it may just be this particular pod that's goofed up, but so this is the thing that's annoying when you don't have access to fix things, when you have to depend on someone else to fix it. And so now we're in here. So click on scans. So we're here at my scans, and we're going to create a new scan. And for what we're doing, this is what we'll use here is we'll use the basic scan, basic network scan. So we're just going to kind of keep this simple. We're going to just name it lab scan. And so here you can see examples how you can do ranges. So you can see here the 192.168.1.1 through 192.168.1.5, and you can actually put commas through there and have several others on there. But what we're going to do is, since we're just going to go ahead and do the full subnet. So we're going to do 192.168.1.0, and we're going to choose the 24-bit subnet mask. And so you can also use files. You can upload a file of hosts as well. So like you're doing your nmap scans, and say you do a discovery of the host, then you can actually go through here and use the file to upload it. And so we're going to go over here to, you can either save it or start, because you can schedule this for later on, but in our case, we're going to launch. So this is handy whenever if you have to scan after hours, that you can go in there and schedule it. And so we have, you can see over here that the scan is running. You actually go into there, and once the host starts showing up, you'll see this host tab over here starts populating. And so you see the status is running. Once it's complete, you'll see that it's completed. So now we're starting to find hosts and vulnerabilities. So you look over here, the host, we got 3 hosts discovered so far, and it's scanning these hosts and it's finding the vulnerabilities. So you can go here and look at the vulnerabilities. Nothing really serious here yet, but then if you go over here, you can actually drill down into the particular host, and you can find the vulnerabilities that are associated with it. So during your class pen test, you'll want to do this to try to find vulnerabilities. And if you scroll over here, you can see the risk rankings. And right now, you see everything is informational. There's nothing high yet. Okay, now we're starting to get some more serious vulnerabilities, something might be able to do something with. And this one we have deals with the network time protocol. And it shows the output, the results from the scan. This is actually what is pulled from that system. And if you scroll over here, you can see the severity is medium, the ID and the version. Let's see. You'll see the risk factor is medium. And you see the CSVV scores on here. A lot of times they'll tell you if it's exploitable or not, if there's an exploit that exists for it. And so when we're doing the class pen test, you'll go through here and document this stuff, even though it not be exploitable. You'll list this in your pen test. So go back up, look at the status of our scan. It should still be running. And you can go over here and pause your scan or stop it too. So if you're doing a pen test and it's affecting a system, you can pause it or even stop. Scan still running. Okay, now we're starting to get to see more vulnerabilities on here. So here we have the MS 15-34, and you can see that it's exploitable with Core Impact, which is a commercial exploit software similar to the commercial version of Metasploit. So we don't have that tool. So if you go here and look, you could possibly find some other tools to exploit it with, different exploits. Okay. And so here we got an FTP vulnerability there that might be exploitable. And so we get down here and see vulnerability information, exploit available. And it says the exploit available is true, so there is an exploit for it. So I think there's a Metasploit. Yeah, you scroll in here further, they'll show you that it's exploitable through Metasploit. So here, like I was mentioned before, you see all these SSL certificate cannot be trusted. And these are just self-signed certificates, and these are actually usually related. Certificate cannot be trusted. It's usually because it's a self-signed certificate, and it's the way they're, even the self-signed certificates that are not created correctly, then they'll give you errors. And so you can see like some ciphers related in algorithms associated with SSH that are considered weak. So this is kind of working similar to what like Nmap does, only it goes a little deeper on you don't have to specify any script to display the vulnerability. So this is a vulnerability scanner, so it actually shows you the exploits as you're going along. You can export and save the files too. So you can save this into the Nessus database format. You can export it to a PDF or HTML or a CSV file, so you can open it up like a spreadsheet. While that's running, we can open up Metasploit. Yes. Were you raising your hand or your stretch? Okay. Okay. So we're doing a search on that Pro FTPD vulnerability. So if we look up through here, we should be seeing the mod copy somewhere in there. Okay, so if you look at this very bottom exploit, it is the mod copy exploit. And so to use that exploit, we're just going to use, and then we're going to put in the path to that exploit. And that loads it. So once we get that load, you're going to need a payload for that. So let's see, show payload. So here we're not seeing anything interpreter wise, which normally interpreter is the best choice, but we'll go with Python. So here you just type in set payload. The nice thing I like about Linux is you can do these tab completes. Like say right here, I type in PA. Some of the Linux command lines do the same thing. You hit tab and it'll tell you payload. So we're going to use NCMD. Unix, reverse, Python. Okay, so we got that loaded. So now we need to type in show options. And so we're going to have our target IP address in there. So we need to put the target. So I'm going to go back to the Nessus scan and see what the IP address is of that system. Yes, you can run that locally. So yeah, you got Kali could be run local as a VM. Yeah. It has metasploit built in. Yes. So we're going to look at the host that this is affected. This is 108. So we're going to go back and set our host, since our host stands for remote host. We need to set our local host, which I'm not sure of that, so we can type in if config within. Damn it. We get our IP address, so it's .150. We'll set our L host. And so that's that. So let's go back and go to show options again and see if I'm missing anything. See, we already have our L port set, but you can change it to different ports. Sometimes firewalls may prevent certain ports, so you can go here and change this to something that will work on that system, but Okay, so with Metasploit, there's some of the modules you use, you can type in check just to see if it's vulnerable. And this is kind of helpful because sometimes you try to run exploits, it can kind of mess up the TCP port on that system. So maybe you run something once, the exploit, you may not be able to go back and run it again. So if the option to check is there, then that's good to run. So it says the target is vulnerable. So we should be able to go in and type in exploit. And if all works, we'll get a connection to the system. But we got an error here. Okay, so there's something wrong with the path that's not writable on here. And so the site path is var www. So we will try, I think this particular one. Path. Okay, var www. I think it may be HTML. Maybe where it needs to go. Okay, so it seemed to like that path. And some of this you have to troubleshoot. You'll even, if you read about like the OSCP exam, they only let you use Metasploit one time. And they would have you think it's a magic bullet. You're going to be able to use it against anything. Get in. It's not always that easy. And there's a good chance that this could, so this shows one shell open. Let's go and look and see if we're actually connected. And see, this is giving us like a lower level shell. So if we had something like, if we had an interpreter session, this would give us a little more options here. So what happens is when we're there, so we can type in ls, type in Linux commands that we can get information, but the problem is we don't have an actual interactive shell. Sometimes you can type in bash where you get certain shells and do things, but this is not working. So there's actually a way to make it interactive with Python, and we did use a Python shell, so that may work here. So I'm going to look at my notes real quick and okay. So there's this little code here that I can put in, and we'll see if that helps. We'll see if this works here, but this is something that really helps a lot when you get like a web shell to a system and you want a fully interactive shell. This usually does the trick. We'll see if this can work here for us. Okay, there we go. Now notice when we do ls, we're getting our command prompt now. So this little snippet of Python code that we inputted here gives a fully interactive shell. And if you plan on doing the OSCP, you're going to need this in the lab somewhere for sure.
That was because you did Python exploit, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I did the Python exploit, so we're able to use Python, and then we're able to use this little shell. Some variations of this you can use you could use like corn shell or just basic shell, just sh, but I like bash. And so now we type in who am I. We saw this before because we're just as, and it helps you spell stuff right. And so this is the service account, this www-data. So in Linux and most Windows systems will, if you type in who am I, it'll tell you what user that system's running as or what access level you have. And some older versions of Windows, you have to do something different, but typically you use who am I. And in Linux, if you use ID, this is nice because this will tell you what groups you're a member of. And so these are all groups that are really not going to do much for us. So from here on, you'd have to escalate your privileges. So you'd have to find where we were talking about chaining exploits together. We're able to get this level access, but we can't really do much with that. Yeah, that's a good one. If we look at the Etsy, no Etsy password file. What's going on here? May I be back far? Okay. Okay, so if we do a cat on the Etsy password file, that used to be where you contain the passwords, but then they made it more secure later on. So they put, this is where your user accounts are, the information, it shows the different groups they're members of. So this is important information. So you go look at these different users, you can find the different groups they're in. But then actually the hashed password is in the Etsy shadow file, because the passwords are what's referred to as shadowed, which is kind of a way of hashing the file. So if we go look at, okay, so we don't have permissions to do that, which is good. That's the way you want it. But one of the things too, it's a good tip for exploiting systems is you can, if you were able to, well, you can navigate to the temp directory. So if there's ever a Linux, you want a directory that you can usually upload files to that's well writable, because you want to be able to write to that file to create like a script or upload scripts. Is the temp directory is usually well writable, so you can upload your exploit code up there, and actually you're able to compile it there too. Sometimes with Linux, when you're exploiting Linux systems, a lot of cases you have to either have a system with the same version of the operating system on it, or you have to upload your exploit code and compile it on that system. So let's go back and look and see if our scan is still running. So our scan is complete. So this is one of the things that you'll need to do on your practice pen test, is go through here and run Nessus so you can find the vulnerabilities. And you can also use Nmap to look for, see if you can find other vulnerabilities that weren't there, that you weren't able to discover with Nessus, because sometimes there's cases you will. Okay. And so this kind of basically shows you how we do this on an automated way using a vulnerability scanner opposed to, and you can also use OpenVOS too, which if you should play around with OpenVOS, it's just not as intuitive and easy to use. OpenVOS is an open source vulnerability scanner, but they do have a commercial version, and OpenVOS was forked from an older version of Nessus. So they basically took the old Nessus code and built on it, built the OpenVOS scanner. Because at one time there used to be a free version of Nessus, and Nessus used to be like, I think it was Java. It didn't run within a browser back when years ago. Okay, so that's Is this something you can run internally and not have a big effect on your servers? Typically not, but some older servers, sometimes it may have an effect on them. I've seen more problems with your nmap scans, not being careful with nmap scans compared to vulnerability scanners, but vulnerability scanners sometimes can cause problems. In a lot of cases, like with our company, we have to do any of our Nessus scans or nmap scans after hours. So it can have an effect. And also too, you can download the version we're using here is the home version, so you can actually download that at home if you have a home lab and play around with that there. As I recommend setting up a home lab, putting some vulnerable VMs on there. Okay. So we just covered the analyzing vulnerabilities section, and we went through Nessus, and we've got a few more lectures coming up before we actually start the pen test, but I'm going to go ahead and send this information out so you can start on that pen test if you want to. I'll send out the instructions. Actually, I'll go ahead and send out the instructions for the full semester for projects, because what we did the first time, and you can go ahead and work on this, complete this all together. The first assignment, what we did is we went through and just did your pen test and then populated like a spreadsheet or a template, report template. And you just put the vulnerabilities in there. You didn't exploit it, but then the next phase was to go through and exploit the systems in the pen test and then write like an executive summary, get a little more detail. So if you want to go ahead and do that, you can start that. So basically this was working in two different phases, but if you want to go ahead and continue on and do the whole project as you go along, that may be more, you may be interested in doing that opposed to just doing the two phase approach. Because ultimately, just once I get the full, if you go the route where you're writing an executive summary, the more drawn out process, then I would count that as the two separate projects. So it depends on what you want to do. Some people, if they're having a harder grasp on things, then maybe it's easier for them to split up. But otherwise, you can continue and do the whole project, both projects as one completed document in project. If that makes sense. So I'll send out links to the project, and also I'll send out, we got here's like the pen test report that we had, the template for that. And so this little section, the detail findings, you'll complete this for every finding. And so the host name you'll necessarily have to put on there. This is the IP address you need, and then the ports. So you can list from, like in the lab, how some of them, you can actually list them out by the names that they're listed in the lab is the host name within that. Because I don't think they're actually assigned a host name within DNS, but so that's what the pen test report looks like. You can write executive summary, just describe the findings and vulnerabilities and how they would negatively impact the system. And let's see what else we got here. Okay, this was the first project. This is kind of what we used here to go through and document this. So it's kind of a way to, you can kind of go through your pen test and it'll help you kind of keep track of it. So you can populate this here first and then apply it to the Word document. Or if you just want to do the final report using just Word, that's acceptable to you. So once that, I'll count that because you're having to perform all these things from the first part to complete the second assignment. So does that make sense? And I'll send out those documents. And this will give you a little more time to get it done because here we are the 17th. So this gives you, an extra week and a half or so to work on it. And this will be like your final report. And one of the things too is this is a best effort. So don't be worried that, that you're going to get a bad grade or, you don't have it down. Maybe you don't understand it. You're still learning. It's going to be, this class is for people to learn and it's your best effort. Whatever your best work you can turn in, that's good to me because, you can only expect, so much of a person. And once you've learned something, once you go through the first time, it's going to be more difficult. Once you go through and review this stuff, it gets easier. And so everyone's at a different level. So, there's no right or no wrong. It's just turning it in. And, I'll give you feedback on your reports and your progress. Someone asked if we're going to give out reports. Yes, I'm going to email a link to the templates so we have the templates to use. And another thing about this too is since you can't save your state within the labs and you can't, so some cases you may have to go in and, because I'm trying to see if Google works this semester, but a lot of this stuff you may have to, there's even, in the instructions, I even show how to set up your host file or set up DNS on your Kali box so you can actually save information. Because like I think right here you can't get to that, but I think you can get to Bing. So trying to get to your Dropbox, or if you Dropbox I may get to, but for some reason the DNS is messed up on here. So like in the instructions on the project, I show you how to change your resolve.conf to so you can get to IP addresses on the internet. So we use the Google 8.8.8.8 IP address so you can resolve to Google. So if you're using Google Drive, using Google Drive or Gmail to transfer your files to yourself. So you want to take your screenshots there. Screenshots you won't put in the spreadsheet, but your final report, the Word document, then you'll use screenshots there. So I would just add your screenshots to show proof that you exploited the system, and you can, some people like to show a lot of detail on, at least go in there and show that you exploited the system, go into the terminal and prove that you were able to get root access or admin if it's on Windows, and then, or if you don't get admin or root, just document what level of access you did get. So that way I can see how far you got. So anyone have any questions?